Our next video, our next support video here is all about active reading notes. So we call these our ARNs, A-R-N, and we use that acronym to indicate that when we're looking at reading a short story or a research article or a novel or a website, it doesn't matter what the source is that we're being active about our reading process. So the active reading note strategy is very simple. You read a chunk, you stop, you ask yourself, what do I see here? And then you gather the data, you gather your learning or insights in the form of notes in the sidebar on the left. So you can work with any given different analysis method. Today we're going to be using the BATS analysis method, and that's our literary paradigm. So we're looking at the different levels of literature, the different devices. We've leveled them onto 4 levels. So we have beta, stands for basic. Those are things like characters, conflict, climax, resolution. We've got alpha. These are advanced, and these are our word play elements and comparative elements. So things like alliteration, similes, metaphors, symbolism, refrain, assonance, symbolism. They live in that alpha window. The third window is our theta window, and this is our thematic window. So it has themes, tones. It has more advanced elements like carpe diem and hubris or irony, foreshadowing. They all live in the theta window. And finally, we came up with a last window, which is our sigma window. And this is a supplemental window. So anything that's not forementioned in those other 3 levels, we can add here into the sigma. So we built out things like timeline, dialogue, imagery, all live in the sigma window. Okay, so we're working with a short story that I wrote called The Legend of Old Mossy. And as you can see, I've already done some of the ARNs in the beginning of the story. So just to remind you, it's the story it's set quite in a wintry environment, and we have a logging camp. And as you can see here, I'll just kind of pick it up from this kind of it's sectioned into the main sections. We have this, the inciting incident is a monster emerged through the swirling shreds of snow. He moved slowly, he was massive. He had been here before. The winds whipped the green beard of lichen twinned at his chin. Like some old feral forest wizard, he looked, pensive and wild. Old Mossy had returned. So yeah, it's a story about a bear invading a logging camp. So we're going to push on with our active reading notes. The night was alive, and old Mossy ambled towards the cookhouse, guided by his nose and experience. He was hungry, and food taunted him like a cherry dangling low on an easy branch. Okay, so what do we notice here? So we stop and we ask ourselves, what's relevant? So we have our first idea here. The night was alive. So we color code our ARNs, and that's why we set up this key at the top. So yellow is that beta or basic window. Green is for alpha or advanced. The blue is theta or thematic, and a gray is going to be sigma or supplemental. So we've noticed the night was alive. Okay, that's obviously an alpha device. That's the classic device of personification. Don't have to write the whole word. You can use shorthand notes to speed up your process. Night is given human qualities. Okay, and we can just code the colors to match, and then we add our number as well. So one thing that students do indicate to me when I'm teaching this method is they do say, oh, teacher, this takes a lot of time. And I say, yes, learning takes time. Learning takes time and patience. But what you're doing is you're engaging with the text, and you're building this critical thinking process where you can filter what you're reading through these different categories. That's a really good critical thinking skill to have. It means you're able to read and analyze as you go. Then down here, we've got another one, like a cherry dangling on an easy branch. So cherry, like a cherry dangling, so it's comparing the sensory experience of the bear to a cherry hanging easily within reach. That is using the word like, and we know that when we have an indirect comparison using like or as, it is a simile. So we're going to put right alpha window, and we can say sim indirect comp of Mossy's, Mossy smelling food to cherry picking. Good. And you can see that, yes, I do use shorthand notes, so sometimes you make the words shorter. Comp stands for comparison. We move on. The ultimate human illusion. Old Mossy battered down the door with one Herculean swat. His paw was a snowshoe. His paw was a boulder tipped with flint daggers. He'd been here before. Old Mossy headed straight for the cooler. He battered the lock like a northeastern gale battering a Nova Scotian schooner. Elemental and unforgiving. Instantly, the door was ripped away. So again, using our arns, we chunk the work into a manageable piece. This paragraph is a manageable piece. We've read it, we stop, we remind ourselves, yes, I'm tracking my bats. What do I see here? One Herculean swat. His paw was a snowshoe. His paw was a boulder tip with flint dagger. So there we have two metaphors lined up back to back. So those are noteworthy. Now you could even include the citation data at the end, which is a way to set up, this is from page 2. So notice when we do an APA citation, you have the author's last name, then you have a comma, a space, the date of publication, a comma, a space, then we have P dot, space, the number of the page, then we close the parenthetical marker, the rounded bracket, we close that and put a period at the end. Now the power of actually doing your citation like this in advance is you're really pre-writing for our triads of support. Now a reminder, we use the writing structure called a triad, which we use to set up our argument in the main body paragraph within our essay. So your triad always has, we call it a triad of support, or we can also use the acronym of ICE, which stands for idea, citation, explanation. So you have an idea sentence, then you have a citation sentence, and then you have an explanation of the relevance of that idea, of that sentence that you're setting up. So also take note here that we're just practicing that citation. We're building out our ideas. We might paraphrase this further later or build it out more. But by doing this practice within our notes, we're really setting ourselves up for the writing process later. Good. Now, this idea of him the bear having been to the camp before, we've heard this a couple of times now. So I'm also going to mark this because it's an example of that powerful alpha device of refrain. And it's good to track a range of different devices, and don't just stick to the same one over and over again. Try to show that you can recognize all of our different literary components that we've been learning. The fact that the bear has been to the logging camp before is restated. This creates emphasis. And we just grab our color. So when we do this process, the ARNs, the active reading notes process, you'll see that we're using a few different methods together. So we're highlighting in the original text, we're color coding to the categories of our literary windows. You could shift that if you're using a different paradigm, like for example, if you were using a SWOT analysis tool. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which is a common assessment tool used in business. You could shift the colors to match those new categories, right? So these tools are powerful because they can be repurposed for different jobs. So we use our color coding, categorization, numbering. We capture the specific type of tool that we're looking at, and then we think about it and we write down what we've noticed about it. And so we're doing a lot there, which essentially means you're building your critical thinking skill set. Okay, so this is an example of how we do our ARNs. And yeah, I'm just keeping an eye on the video length here because we try to keep these videos to about 10 minutes a piece. Okay, so we notice, yeah, there is a simile here, but we've noted a few similes already, so we're going to push on. You don't have to capture every single thing you see. You're trying to filter for the things you think are most important that you can utilize later when you're writing about the story. Old Mossy waded into the logger's larder. Okay, that's alliteration. So you could even do the color coding initially while you do your paragraph chunking and then decide which ones you think are most relevant. He'd been here before, ever since they built their camp on his home. So there's that refrain again. When he was a cub, the salmon creek had run right here, where the cookhouse was. Trees had reached to the sky, trees that his grandfathers and great-grandfathers had built by pulling salmon from the creek. Their bones and the fallen trees' roots had been woven into one. They were the forest. He'd played in their toes with his siblings. Those old friends were all gone now, never to sing again to the night sky full of stars, full of dreams, but gone. So we can see that now the writer, the author, has shifted gears here a little bit, and some of our big ideas are coming out to the surface. So good. The trees had reached the sky. Trees that his grandfathers and great grandfathers had pulled. So this, to me, this would fall under the theta window. And I would say that this one here is very important. So we'll call this point 15. Their bones and the fallen trees' roots had woven into one. Had been woven into one. They were the forest. He'd played in their toes, but those old friends were all gone now. So again, all of this is kind of falling into the thematic window, that theta window. And I'm just watching my time. I know I need to keep my video to a certain length in order to be able to post it seamlessly. So I'm going to skip ahead to number 17. So this would be a theta device. This is a theme. And you could even say it's theme slash tone because it kind of carries both devices. The author wants to show the value of the forest as an ecosystem, right? And then there is a sad and nostalgic tone here. Good. Okay, so what you can see is that the entire process here is about being deliberate with your reading, breaking it into chunks, using a system, and being shrewd about capturing notes that you think you'll be able to use later when you go to write about these stories.